Episode 1. The Ghosts of Londinium. Every empire begins with a footprint. This one started in the mud. Long before London became a symbol of imperial grandeur, before the palaces, the parliament, the double-decker buses, and the crown jewels, it was nothing but a damp, unassuming patch of riverbank. In 43 AD, when the Roman legions first landed on the shores of Britain, they weren't drawn to the site for its beauty. They saw the River Thames, a wide tidal artery winding through the wilderness, and they saw strategy. At a narrow bend in the river, with high ground nearby and access deep into the countryside, the Romans founded Londinium. This wasn't meant to be a city in the romantic sense. Londinium was a machine, a port, a customs hub, a military checkpoint. It was infrastructure wrapped in stone, a place built for movement, taxation, and control. It grew quickly, paved in Roman order, roads cutting through muddy forests, timber forums emerging from the fog, temples and bathhouses rising as if summoned from the Italian sun. But Londinium did not rise unchallenged. In 60 AD, a firestorm descended upon it. Queen Boudica, the fierce leader of the Iceni tribe, launched a revolt so devastating that the Roman historian Tacitus claimed Londinium was abandoned to destruction. The fledgling city was torched, its citizens slaughtered. For a moment, it seemed the empire's grip had snapped, but Rome was never one to retreat permanently. Within a year, Londinium was rebuilt, stronger, colder, more calculated. Stone replaced timber. Walls rose. A bridge stretched across the Thames, anchoring the city's dominance. It was no longer just a provincial town. It was a node in an imperial web. Londinium had learned that survival meant evolution, and evolution demanded permanence. Over the next 3 centuries, the Romans reinforced the city with all the hallmarks of empire. A basilica for justice, grain stores to feed the masses, and a road network that stretched outward like fingers gripping the island. And then, they left. As the Roman Empire crumbled under pressure from within and without, Londinium was slowly abandoned. Nature reclaimed it. For centuries, it became a haunted place, overgrown ruins and whispers in the fog. Medieval Londoners built their own structures atop the buried bones, rarely understanding what lay beneath. But here's where the twist begins to take shape. Modern London still walks the paths of the ancients. Quite literally. In the heart of the financial district, beneath office towers and coffee shops, archaeologists have uncovered perfectly preserved Roman roads, complete with wheel ruts from ancient carts, and market stalls lining the edges. One road, in particular, runs directly beneath modern-day Cornhill, and shockingly, its orientation matches the surrounding street layout. This isn't coincidence. Much of London's core, its roadways, boundaries, even some property lines, were built over the Roman blueprint. The city's center still breathes in the shape of its ancient lungs. Londinium may have died, but its skeleton remains, and its bones still direct the flow of commerce, influence, and power. In other words, London didn't become great overnight. It was programmed for greatness by a civilization obsessed with dominance. What the Romans laid down was more than architecture. It was a strategy buried in stone. The Roman road network wasn't erased, it was absorbed. And today's London, the capital of a former global empire, still moves to the rhythm of a 2,000-year-old plan. Episode 2. Fire, Plague, and Profit. London didn't just survive disaster, it capitalized on it. By the 17th century, London had evolved from a ghost of Roman ambition into a chaotic, sprawling medieval powerhouse, a city bursting at the seams, its narrow streets twisted like veins through crowded neighborhoods. Timber houses leaned precariously overhead. Open sewage ran beneath the cobblestones. The stench was unbearable, the poverty visible. And yet, trade was booming. From the River Thames flowed goods, spices, silks, sugar, and from the city flowed power. But this prosperity came with a price. In 1665, London was gripped by terror. The Great Plague struck with a cruelty few had imagined. Entire households were sealed shut with red crosses. The death toll surged past 100,000. The city held its breath, praying for divine intervention. But none came. Londoners died in silence, their bodies carted off in the night. And then, just 1 year later, as if the plague hadn't been punishment enough, came the Inferno. On the night of September 2nd, 1666, flames erupted from a bakery on Pudding Lane. What followed was apocalyptic. The Great Fire of London raged for 4 days, devouring over 13,000 buildings. St. Paul's Cathedral crumbled in smoke. Markets, homes, even prisons melted into the blaze. When the smoke cleared, more than 80% of the city's core was ash. London had been reduced to rubble, or so it seemed. But then came the twist. For some, the fire was devastation. For others, it was opportunity. Behind the scenes, a quiet recalibration of power had already begun. Landowners who had watched their crowded, collapsing neighborhoods go up in flames saw something else rise from the ashes. Real estate potential. Within days, whispers spread that some of the wealthiest merchant families had already secured new land grants in the soon-to-be redesigned city. Planners, architects, and politicians convened, not in mourning, but in strategy. One name rose to prominence: Sir Christopher Wren, the visionary architect tasked with rebuilding a new London. His plans were wide, rational, and fireproof. Streets would be broader. Buildings of stone would rise in place of wood. Churches would soar. The city would not return to what it had been. It would be reborn as a capital worthy of empire. But this was no democratic rebirth. Entire neighborhoods were restructured without consent. The poor, unable to reclaim their destroyed properties, were pushed out. Their charred plots quietly absorbed into the holdings of London's elite. In the public eye, the fire had been a divine tragedy. In private, it was a calculated purge, one that allowed those already in power to reshape London in their image. The Great Fire didn't just destroy London. It cleansed the map for the powerful to redraw. Under the guise of rebuilding, they consolidated wealth, erased undesirable districts, and designed a city built for trade, control, and spectacle. Beneath the grandeur of Wren's new St. Paul's Cathedral lies a darker truth. London's imperial future was forged in flame, not by accident, but by ambition.